Danner, was this another case of Max Verstappen cracking under pressure when he has to actually race people instead of being so far up front? And do you think a 10-second time penalty was enough?
I feel like if I answer this question truthfully, I may be arrested. But
You and Ben both.
yeah, yeah. But I try to give you all as truthful as answers as possible, so I'm gonna let it rip here. Max Verstappen should be suspended for our next race in Canada. I think that today's particular um, incidents that he got himself into absolutely warranted 4 penalty points and what should have resulted in a one race ban. But I think that F1 knows that Max Verstappen is part of what sells tickets and puts butts in seats. So having him not be at one of the premier races on the F1 calendar would be an absolute loss for them. At the same time, though, you know what else is a loss? Not having proper racing standards applied to drivers, and that's kind of been the story of the last 5 years for Max Verstappen. He constantly pulls these little antics like this every week that he doesn't run well and up front, and I'm frankly getting rather sick of it. It's just like, I don't think that he should have had to give the position back to George. Let me just say that first and foremost. On the one hand, I do think if Max even remotely tried to tap the brake and continue to make that second corner, he probably could have without driving off the track. But as we've seen with Max Verstappen, anytime he even faces even a remote amount of contact, he thinks that that gives him the right to just drive off the circuit and keep his position. So, I don't think that he should have had to give the position back to George because he didn't initiate the contact and George was not ahead at the apex of the corner, whether I think that rule is asinine or not. And then I've seen NASCAR drivers have more grace in, executing payback than what we saw out of Max Verstappen today. I just nothing about that was incidental, accidental, nothing like that. It was purely intentional. You don't just throttle up in the braking zone and clean out a guy that is not even near the apex. George was trying to give him room to continue on the bottom of the corner, and Max took all of it and more. And while the 10-second penalty is something you definitely have to adjudicate during the race, I agreed with that portion of it. I just felt like the nature of the incident was, completely avoidable. So I just feel like this is kind of like Max Verstappen at his worst, which is, him at any point where he's not in first place. So, yeah, I think that a one race ban could have been on the table, and I think the FIA decided to coward out and not do anything about it and give him 3 to put him right on the edge. So, for the next 2 weeks, Max Verstappen has to mind his P's and Q's, and he's terrible at that. So, we'll see if he can keep everything bolted together, but I have a high suspicion that that is not what's going to happen.
I feel Max, the pressure got to him and he caved under it. I mean, he was looking like potentially getting the opportunity for the podium. Then we have the safety car period. And then he goes out on hard tires. He knew he was going to have a hard time trying to hold off everybody else on mediums or soft tires. But that's all Red Bull had. And they just raced their heart out to try to get the best finish they could, but it was just not working out. And then, like you said, Tanner, it's just like he never lost the lead entering the corner. I don't see why he had to give the position back. But unless, the Red Bull team just assumed like maybe that was not the case, be on the safe side, give the position to George Russell. If Max Verstappen was on soft tires, I think he would have not had an issue because he knows he could probably still race George Russell, claim that position again. But he just knew he was a sitting duck. And that move was just something where I feel, like you said, that should be a one race ban. There was no way he could get out of it. In the post-race media discussion, he refused to answer that question. George Russell made it clear that he saw it as just intentional, that this is just the way he races. That's how he is. And the standards that he has set, I think, considering he is a multi-time Formula One World Driver Champion, people are going to look up at him and say, this is how he raced, so I'm going to race this way. We cannot lose the standard of what's good racing in Formula One, because I think it's already bad enough where so often whoever gets the lead entering the corner is just going to push the other driver wide off the course, or they hit the brakes and they get a bigger gap from them. This is just getting to the point where, in this case, was Verstappen. He's been known for doing this. This is coming back to him, and he's not happy with it. I think there's also all the stress and factors of what is going on with this Red Bull team. You have Yuki Tsunoda just putting around. It looks like an absolute joke right now, this Red Bull squad that got the constructors years ago, and now you can't get a good driver to handle this car. It's reminded me of Honda and MotoGP. Nobody can make that bike work after Marc Marquez left. Nobody can make this car work except Max Verstappen. And now he's getting to the point where he's running out of what he can do with this car. So overall, I think the pressure got to him. The 3 points, that might be the saving grace and saying, okay, that's a big deal, because I feel if there is one thing, that could be a big factor, a potential race ban. But I feel like if he didn't have such a high number of penalty points, I would feel like this was not enough of a penalty.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely Max Verstappen at his worst today. And it's really crazy. It seems like this is the same old song and dance we see with him all the time whenever he has to try to go out and race someone for position. It's like you give him the best car, he goes out there and he's the man. But once he actually has to battle someone for position when he doesn't have the superior car, that's when we all run into problems. As Adam says, that Max knows he's not winning the world championship this year, so he's frustrated. Yeah, it's obviously frustrating, when you won the last few world championships and now you're in a car that, second Vettel to the McLarens, and Denver says Max knows he's losing. He knows he's fighting a losing battle in this year's championship and dealing with both McLaren drivers, especially Oscar. Yeah, I understand why it would be a frustrating time for Max Verstappen. You're on top of the world and then you're not. So it definitely has to be, or it should be, a humbling experience to him. And Joe, you mentioned Max not really wanting to talk much about it after the race, but he did make one comment. ESPN posted the comment that Max made when they asked him about George Russell's comments and how George is worried about the kids watching him, like you were alluding to, that you have young kids out here who love Formula One, who look up to multi-time world champions like Max Verstappen, as like a role model. And if they see their so-called hero, making moves like this on tracks when they're in the go-karts or in Formula 3, Formula 2, they see their hero doing this, they're like, hey, I can do this too to pass for position or whatever, and then it just sets a bad precedent. Then this stuff will trickle down, to all of the feeder series and all of that, and that's something, not a precedent that we want to set moving forward. And when Max was asked what he think about George, worried about what the young kids coming up the ladder systems, think when they watch this, Max said, "I'll bring you some tissues next time, George." So really snarky comment there from Verstappen. And George Russell also said, when in response to the incident getting hit by Verstappen, he said that that's just how Max goes racing, and forgot it was a real F1 race and not iRacing. And some have compared it to when Michael Schumacher turned or the lack of turning into Jacques Villeneuve in 1997. Schumacher was stripped of all his points and disqualified, and Verstappen is now up to 11 penalty points after receiving 3 more penalty points for the incident today. So he's 1 penalty point away from a 1 race ban. I know, Tanner, you've already alluded to how you feel about this. So I'm going to ask you first, Joe. Verstappen will obviously need to be on his best driving behavior for the entire month of June until, some of his penalty points expire. And so here's my question for you. Do you think it is a realistic possibility that he gets a 1 race ban? And I have a feeling if he gets a 1 race ban, I'm just going to call it now, Red Bull not going to be scoring any points for that race, because Yuki Tsunoda is driving a car that's slower than Chugga-Boom from the Perils of Penelope pit stop. It's just insane how crazy that second car is at Red Bull. And then if you try to put someone else in the car, who are you going to put in the car to replace Verstappen? Hadjar? Are you going to call up a Yuma Walker from Japan? It seems like just an insanely ridiculous situation that could unfold.
I'm going to say this. We are going to Canada, Montreal. And we all know that first corner, how is that right hand and that left hand and that loop. How many times have we seen first lap mayhem there? This is where I feel like Max Verstappen is at a disadvantage. If I'm an Oscar Piastri, a Charles Leclerc in a Ferrari that you might have Max Verstappen behind you, depending on how qualifying goes, and he has a better start, you could much easier put Verstappen in that bad spot in which either A, he's going to have to let off, or B, make a decision. And if he makes contact, it's very easy for everyone to point the finger and it's like, oh, Max Verstappen, he's in the wrong. He needs penalty points. He is not in a good spot entering Montreal. And I don't know which races off the top of my head after Montreal. Is it Austria by chance, the Red Bull Ring, or is it a different track? But if that's where I think it could happen, because this racetrack at Montreal, with that first opening complex corners, you could easily see Max Verstappen put in the bad spot. And that's what I would do if I was a Charles Leclerc. I know he could face a race ban. He's going to have to race a little carefully around me. Advantage to them, disadvantage to Max Verstappen, which not often we say that, but I do think it's a very realistic possibility.
Yeah, Max Verstappen's absolutely on the back foot here, and every driver in the field needs to make it their priority to make him make those choices every single lap, every single turn. Because if you can just get him out of the field, you can finally show us all what real racing at Formula One level is all about. So we can finally remove the problem and take it somewhere else. I would like to add one thing from our previous question that Joe mentioned about how Verstappen kind of answered that question after the race about how, was it deliberate? And he was just like, does it matter? And then he added, I only want to answer questions about the race. And to that, I would say, I wish that journalist had a little bit more gumption to just be like, well, that happened in the race, Max, so I'm asking you about the race. So just to, juice him up a little bit. But outside of that, I think that Max Verstappen is going to have to make a choice over these next two races that he's probably not going to want to make. And I just don't have the faith in his, ability to rein himself in enough that he's going to make the right decisions. And I'm going to be honest with you guys. I'm a little bit worried that he's going to do something stupid and get himself sat out for more than one race, knowing that he'll already be out for one because of the first dumb thing he does. He has displayed enough erratic and frankly just flat out reckless behavior on the racing circuit before that when he's put into a high pressure situation, he makes really dangerous decisions. And I'm frankly a little concerned that he could take that to a very bad degree if things get real bad for him at one of these next two races. So, I think that he's in extreme danger of missing a race, maybe more if he does something profoundly stupid. And I think it's well within his character to do something profoundly stupid here soon. So if you're a Red Bull fan, you got to hope that he keeps all of his screws tightened and keeps everything together. But if we're looking at the Max Verstappen of 2025 that we've seen thus far that already has 11 penalty points, I'm inclined to believe that he's going to do something really stupid and get himself sat out for a week.